Tonight's meeting to order, and we will start with the Code of Conduct. Tom Chapa.
Here.
Heather Del Conte.
Here.
Pamela Dow.
Here.
Lisa Glidden. James McKenzie.
Here.
Sean Onbeck.
Here.
Linda Serino. And Zachary DeMar. If you would all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will move to the Code of Conduct public hearing.
Good evening, Board. Great to see everybody back. We are all set here. We have our team tonight who would like to just share some of the revisions that we like to make, the revisions that we like to make to the Code of Conduct as we begin this school year. So Dr. Duffy is here with Jen Sullivan and also Liz Eck, who have been working together with our stakeholders and our schools to help us with revising the code. So we're going to turn this over to them, and we will kind of go through and see what's new.
Great, thank you, sir. So hello, everybody. Thanks for having us here tonight, or this afternoon. So each year, what we do is we convene a committee to consider proposed changes for the Code of Conduct. And that has a lot of different people. We involve a lot of people. We ask for support. We ask for members to join us. And we generally get between 20 to 25 people who are very interested in working on the Code of Conduct with us. And we appreciate that. However, in 2019, the world changed, and so we had COVID to deal with. We didn't want to give up what we were working on in the Code of Conduct, and so what we did was we got a little ad hoc group together. We asked our entire group who would be interested in actually working on this throughout this pandemic. And we had a few people, myself, Tara Clark from the high school, Samantha Spalding from the middle school, and Penny Morley from the high school, Jenny and Liz Eck also. And so what we did was we look at different things and make considerations about what are the hot button issues today. And so after discussion, we determined, with a lot of input from people, that attendance was an issue that we really needed to look at. And so we went to our Code of Conduct, and our Code of Conduct had some information in it, very little, and it wasn't really substantive. What we had were cursory looks at attendance. We had a little bit more when you looked at attendance and how that affects athletics, because the Code of Conduct for athletics is at the end of our total Code of Conduct. And so anyhow, we looked at that and we determined, okay, so now what do we do? So what we did was we looked at different documents that we have in the district. We looked at different experiences that the buildings were having. We talked to different people about what's important. We drew all that existing information together, and we crafted what you were sent, I believe, the Code of Conduct amendment that we wanted to make as regards attendance. And so what we wanted to do was just kind of bring you through a little bit of the process and a little bit about what that change looks like. And so the change itself is pretty big because there wasn't really a lot in there. So as you can see, what we did was we looked at everything that we had written and we determined, here's the important things to focus on. So if Jenny, you want to click that? Okay, we had to keep in mind too our mission statement and our vision statement and how attendance really affects that, how we can strive to get where we need to be and how attendance plays into that. Okay, and so we're looking at the different supports. Now the supports that we have in place for attendance are not mentioned anywhere in the Code of Conduct, so we wanted to bring those in as well. Okay. Okay, and so if you look at this, our proposed changes or additions wanted to ensure the regular attendance of all students, and we wanted to make sure that the parents realized that we, as well as they, are responsible for adherence to having their children here every day. We wanted to identify attendance patterns to see what was actually going on. We wanted to make sure that we knew the whereabouts of every child. Now, in the school, that's fairly easy, but when we have kids who are outside of the school, that becomes a much larger issue. And so we have to make sure we draw in a lot of community support. And we had to make sure also that all of our children and their families are complying with existing laws and regulations, because, as you know, until they complete the year in which they turn 16, they really need to be here in attendance. And last year was pretty trying. I mean, you know, it was a very different kind of year, and so there were some real challenges. We wanted to make sure that we had the daily attendance accurately recorded for state aid purposes. We also wanted to raise the achievement level, obviously, and we wanted to make sure that all of our students are graduating. Those two last things are probably the most important things that we really wanted to look at. Also, when we look at the Code of Conduct and the attendance section, there's actually a place in there where you need to talk about different incentives. And so the incentives that we developed are proactive family engagement, of which Liz is an expert, and she'll talk about that in just a second, and creating a welcoming and engaging climate for our students, delivering engaging, relevant, and an inclusive curriculum, addressing attendance challenges in a timely and conscientious manner, and partnering the school with all the community resources that we have. And so that's quite a lot of things that we want to do. And so the addition of more staff now is going to really ensure that we're able to get out there and make sure that all of our children are attending, and if they're not attending, to find out why and to find out what the challenges are and to remediate those. And so the intervention strategy process that we have is to distinguish specific elements of the pattern, and I could read this for you, but what we're doing is we're going out there, we're finding out what the problems are. We're sending out people like Liz, who are experts in attendance, to figure out what can we do and how can we do it. And so Liz, and I know I didn't ask you about this before, Liz, do you want to just say a little bit about going out, talking with the kids, getting them in?
Sure. So really, it's engaging with the parents, and it's understanding what's happening at home, or is there a home and school problem, and by virtue of including the parents in the process and really creating a transparent process, because we're asking them to partner with us. And there are a lot of times where parents may have had slightly more negative interactions, and we really want to change the focus of that as well, and let them know that the school and the districts are it's a collaborative process. But when we talk about engaging and partnering, we really want parents to be a part of that process. And so using things like home visits, not in a punitive manner, but as a way to meet parents and guardians where they're at and really connect with them and ask them that million-dollar question, that question that is, what do you want for your child? Not even later today, a week from now, a year from now, but ultimately, what do you envision for your child? What do you hope for? And by really being able to break down those larger goals, then the school can partner with the parents as well, and we can say, okay, we want this for your child too. So how can we work together?
Thanks, Liz. Okay. Jenny, is there anything that you wanted to add to that? Okay. I always have to make sure I ask. Okay. All right. And so I know that you've received a copy of this, and I'm anticipating that there's probably some questions about the additions. So please let us know your thoughts on that. Anyone? Yes.
Yeah, I first of all, thank you for your work on this. And secondly, I'm just, because we don't want to approach, as you just mentioned, attendance in a punitive way, we really want to look holistically at the family and all of that. I'm wondering why we have a list of unexcused absences, why we can't just be a little bit more broad about that and maybe say anything that isn't approved by the principal or by the superintendent, because as I look at that list, I'm seeing things that actually research shows are very good things for families to be doing. And although, like, I'll take family vacation just for an example, I know it's listed in there that there's plenty of breaks to do that, but it kind of overlooks the fact that not everybody's work schedule is on an academic schedule. And it's very hard for some people to get time off during holidays or during those more prime time, school breaks. So I think it's kind of something that I think we need to be a little more considerate about, just especially understanding that some of these things really are important in terms of growth of our children.
Okay. So did you have specific recommendations for this list on things that we should remove or add?
Well, I guess my question is, why have a list of unexcused
List it all.
absences when some of those things I think should be excused if they, if somebody can prove an educational value, but also it seems like there might be some things omitted, that if you're going to have a comprehensive list, it's got to be a
Right.
comprehensive list.
Right, and I know that there had been a question about that, and I did put, I've updated this since this has gone to you, and I did put down at the top that this is not an exhaustive list. But we certainly do not have to give the examples if the board is more comfortable with that. So.
Well, I guess, is there a reason? I guess I don't want to wipe something out if there's a rationale behind it.
I think, and then you can just piggyback if I sort this out. So part of the reason when we take attendance at a public school, we're under the law for attendance that New York State puts out for us. And so a vacation, if a family says, we had this wonderful opportunity to take our kids to here, there, or wherever, of course we want that for the child. But unfortunately, the attendance law says that that's an unexcused absence. So we can't make that an excused absence. The other thing is when we're looking at attendance and when we report to New York State, they're not differentiating between excused and unexcused.
Right.
An absence is an absence, whether a child is home sick, if a child is home because of vacation, a child is home for a variety of reasons. So what the most important thing is when kids are home, how is it that we can help them get back to school or meet the demands that the classroom has in place for them while they have to be home. And so that's kind of like when we look at the policy altogether and what our individual schools are doing to make sure that we're making those homeschool connections. That's the positivity that we want in place. So while our hands are tied in one spot, we really have an open door in another spot.
So all of the things listed unexcused are state mandates? But if they don't differentiate, what's the difference? I guess I don't understand.
So I think what we were trying to do when the committee was together, we are, as you all are aware, we are a school district that has been cited for chronic absenteeism. And what we know that there's some challenges with is parents, some of our parents view excused and unexcused absences almost like the same. And so what we were trying to do was give some examples to differentiate and say, hey, listen, this is an example of an excused absence. This is an example of an unexcused one, right? So for example, on the list, yeah, you're excused when you have a quarantine or you have a medical or dental issue. There's some religious observances that by law we have to make sure that we allow children to have. Unexcused, things like, and these are certainly things that we have seen over the last year. Well, Johnny's babysitting at home. We understand, but that really isn't a reason that we can have Johnny stay out. How can we help you? We have some social workers, some other folks who can help you and assist you with that. He just needed to stay home. Is Johnny sick? Is there something going on? Because what happens is that, again, as Jennifer tried to share, we do have some state requirements around compulsory educational laws that say, hey, listen, these are, kids got to be in school. And so what we try to do is give some examples. Now, with that said, we could just in the code define excused and unexcused as opposed to using examples. The goal was just to try to give people some kind of an example of what we meant by excused versus unexcused. And we've certainly, the short time that I've been here, we have had parents who, they may think something is a real excuse for the child not to be here. But honestly, in the eyes of the law, it really is not. So we're trying to provide examples, but we can, if the board wishes, we could just give a definition of excused and unexcused if that might be helpful. So an excused absent means, someone is out of school without the proper, whatever the definition is. We can use a state definition around that. I'm just trying to explain a little bit of where that came from, the background on that. I hope that helps.
It does. I guess, it's kind of trying to solve one problem, but it involves everybody, and not everybody fits the definition of the problem. Do you know what I'm saying? So I do think it, unfortunately, by listing, sometimes I think we can kind of counteract what we're trying to do in terms of looking at a whole situation and a whole family. Does anyone else have an input? I don't want to be the only one speaking.
No, I totally agree with Heather. I mean, for instance, you have a approved college visits, number 9, and excused, but in unexcused, number 9, college/university visits. So what's approved? You have to get prior approval from the building principal.
Right.
So that, I mean, right there is confusing. And when you hit on the vacation, not that I'm not a proponent of people taking their kids out of school and willy-nilly vacationing. I'm not. However, you do have to address the fact that during school breaks, everything is 3 times as expensive. So you do have families that also may look at that aspect of it. They haven't been on vacation in 5 years, but they can't afford to go at school vacation time because it's just astronomically out of their range. So there are many considerations. So again, you're trying to solve one problem, like Heather said, by bringing, everybody doesn't fit into it. So I think I would rather see the definition as opposed to the listing, because everyone's not going to fit into listings.
Sure. Okay.
We can absolutely make those changes, and it was to kind of illustrate the fact that New York State, like Jenny said, they don't differentiate what's excused and what isn't excused, and so you essentially have 18 days to play with, 2 days a month, and if you hit that threshold, then you're considered chronically absent. And research has shown that, even starting from kindergarten, if you have students who are chronically absent throughout their entirety of their school career, they're more likely to drop out. They struggle to be at grade level with reading and whatnot. And so really what we're trying to do is also educate parents and guardians to let you know that, like, if you take those 5 days of vacation, you've taken those 5 days. And whether it's excused or unexcused, you've missed 5 days of school. And so just be cognizant of the fact that now we're at that 5-day threshold. What happens if your student comes down with the flu and they're out for another 5 days? Now we're at 10 days. And what happens if they break an arm or something else happens? Now we're 13, 14, 15 days. And we just really want, like I said, parents and guardians to be aware, because a lot of times they don't even realize how many days of school that their students have missed. And those add up quickly too. And so again, if you have a kindergartner who starts out with at least 18 days missed, if they continue that pattern throughout the entirety of their school career, they're in school for a year and a half of school when they graduate. And that's really that's what we want parents and guardians to understand.
The chart, I'm sorry, go ahead. The chart that we included on page 48 was a way for us to more easily illustrate, how quickly those absences can accumulate and what happens as a result.
And I love that chart. But I can guarantee you, most of our parents are not reading our code of conduct. So something like that would need to go home and in the elementary newsletters, in the middle school newsletter.
Agree.
High school, it's just got to be pushed out Parent Square. However we communicate, something like that needs to be put out to the people, so that to parents and guardians, because I agree, they don't realize how quickly 18 days in a heartbeat can go, just like that. And they are not realizing that. So I do love that chart because that hits home.
Right.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Feedback? Other feedback, or?
I guess if the state doesn't distinguish, how are they mandating unexcused? That's what I'm not understanding.
Yeah.
So I do have a couple, maybe even a few comments. One is that I think this is great that we're doing this. I do think that absenteeism leads into, a lot of the problems that students end up having in school, as you've illustrated. So I do think this is a wonderful thing to put in there when we're doing our strategic plan. This is something that we focused on. It's where we should be focusing our energy. So this is great overall. I do agree with what Heather said about the idea of the unexcused list. I have no problem with the excused list because the excused list is telling you what you are allowed to do, right? You don't have to ask permission unless there's a couple things like a college visit. Or maybe I'll have a question about the music lessons. But, you know, with some things that have approval, you've signified that. And I think that's good, so a parent can, if they are looking at this, they can look at it and say, these are the things the child will be excused from. And I do think it's important to talk about why we're doing this, because as Heather was just saying, when we're talking about what the state classifies and the state does not. You know, I remember sitting in our middle school when we were going through the process coming up with a plan for all of this. And it really shocked me that the state didn't take into account what we would think, most people would think is a valid excuse.
Right.
That the state literally says, well, you're either here or you're not. So in learning that, I kind of realized, okay, that's what we're dealing with that. This to me is a little bit different than that because what we're doing here is trying to identify a system in which we can, I'm not doing it, the administrators, right? But the administrators can identify what's excused and what's not and help the student, help the student's guardians, parents, whomever, what support structure to increase attendance. So while the state may not differentiate, we can to help us improve attendance overall. Okay? So I get that, and I think that's a great idea. But I do come down on the unexcused about why that's even necessary, other than you're trying to indicate to parents or students what you've heard a lot and you don't want them to do. Which I can kind of get that, but it can never be exhaustive enough, right? I mean, again, I'm being facetious here, but you know, you've got the hair appointments down here, but not manicure, pedicure.
Those are absolutely necessary for some people.
If it's a medical excuse, I can see it. That's where the doctor's note comes in, right? And then we can excuse these things. I can get these kinds of things. When you've got this unexcused, you know, my kid's a gamer, and they're in a video gaming tournament where they may win money, but they got to be out of school for it. These are the things that I think would normally fall under unexcused, but aren't listed there.
Right.
So it becomes an unattainable list when you start the unexcused. To me, the more logical approach is to define what is excused, leave open the ability for administrators to use their good judgment, and then leave it at that. So that's my second point. I guess my third point is kind of small, but you just kind of mentioned it here, and as I'm seeing on board docs, this isn't what was originally sent to us. There have been modifications to it.
That's right.
So I am going to ask that if we're going to be...
One modification, it was just a statement at the top of the list, which
Right.
says this is not an exhaustive list.
Okay.
That was the only modification. All the other
Okay,
things have remained.
that was the only modification.
Yes,
then.
sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just, I hate voting on things I haven't seen.
I understand. No, the whole document has
You know,
not been
so
told, just that one
I will
statement.
step off that one. So I guess I'll end with a question that I have going through this list of approved. I am all for music lessons and pulling students out of class where appropriate for our faculty to be teaching our students music is necessary. It's just, you know, it's the style. You have to do it. But I'm wondering what the music lessons with administrative approval means. Does it mean our in-house faculty?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
then-
in-house lessons that happen during the daytime.
Then that's
Yes.
fine. I was just wondering if it meant we were excusing people to private lessons off campus.
No,
You know,
no.
leaving
And that
school.
shows how language can sometimes be ambiguous and people are taking different things away from that. But yeah, that's for our in-house folks, yes.
Beautiful, great. That's all I have.
Then
Thank
maybe
you.
instead of saying with administrative approval, just say in-house or, you know, in school lessons. But I don't think if it's an in-school lesson, a parent wouldn't have to write an excuse for that.
No,
So it doesn't even have to be on the list.
but it would be an excuse from the class. So they
Right.
not only take attendance for the total day, but if a student misses a class like we learned from virtual, I know my power went out once, you know, and, you know, student got, they're absent from class because the power went out.
Right.
You know, so if they're even absent from one class, that would count as part of this.
Right.
So if they left class for a music lesson, this is what we're talking about.
Right? So if they, like in the high school, they have what, 7 or 8 period days, you miss a period, in the computer system, in the database, you have to put in what the excuse is, and you can put in approved lessons, basically. So it's one of the things that go in.
And then one of the other things we have to consider too, because there's so many things that you have to balance here, is the seat time that somebody at the secondary level has to have in order to earn the credits in that particular class. So we have to make sure that we don't say every Tuesday and Thursday, Johnny's not going to be able to go to English 12. We have to make sure that someone has taken a really close look at that and approved it so that that can happen.
Yeah, their lessons rotate day and period.
Periods, yes.
It's a well-thought-out process they've gone through. But yeah, Heather, they show as an absence from the class, like on the report cards and stuff, it would show as absences. But they're excused because it's the in-house music lesson. But there are, people take private lessons and want to get out of school early to get to the early lesson and stuff, and that wouldn't be acceptable.
No. So, board, what I'm hearing, I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah, I just have one, this is going to sound nitpicky, but just for consistency's sake, there are, in most of this, we use periods when we have bullet pointed items, but on page 34, there are no periods at the end of the sentences. I'm sorry, but things like that just like, yeah, so just for consistency to make sure that like we're uniform throughout the document. And
Okay, and are you looking, I'm sorry, you're looking at the entire code of conduct there, page 34?
yeah, like I downloaded what was on
Okay.
board docs.
So my apologies, that's actually one of the areas that we did not look at this year, but I'll go through and make sure that that happens.
Okay, well, it's part of the attendance policy. It's at the beginning of it. So it's for me, it's the top of, I can send it to you if you want, because there's also a couple places at the top of the document where there are extra spaces in the sentences.
That makes me crazy, so yeah, please do.
Okay, all right.
So what I'm hearing is you'd like to, I just want to make sure we have consensus. The board would like to see maybe the definition for unexcused and leaving some language around leniency, around the administration to be able to say yea or nay. And then a couple spaces or periods that we can kind of make sure we go through with our editing to do. Would that be all right with the board? If so, what we could do is we could take this back, edit it, and bring it back to you at our next board meeting. And if you're good with it, you can approve, or if not, you can disapprove. Does that sound good to everybody? Is that okay?
Perfect.
All right. And Lisa, if you could just send those to me, that would be good.
Okay.
All right? And between Karen and I, we'll make sure we get those to you back.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay? Other than that, are we all good with everything else?
I did have one thing I just
ahead.
want to say. I think it's a great document. It's a great comprehensive document for us to use internally. But do we have anywhere where we show our expectations with bullet points for the students that says these are the expectations,
Right.
that doesn't get as involved or as comprehensive?
There is actually, on our website, there is what they call the plain language summary. So every district takes the 97,000-page document and condenses it to 3 pages. And so that's what we do. The additions that we've made here obviously are not in that because it hasn't been approved yet, but once it's approved, then we'll go back to the plain language summary and redo that.
All right. And do we then use that proactively as opposed to them coming to us? We bring it to the students?
absolutely.
All expectations, it's all laid out in front of them? Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
sure.
Any other questions?
I'm all set. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right, we'll
board.
bring that back at the next board meeting for approval.
Thank
Okay?
you very much, and I want
Thank
to
you
thank
all.
my group, too, that has
Yes.
worked so hard on this.
We will now end the hearing session and move to the regular meeting.
Right now? Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
At this time, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yep, okay. The next is the public session to the Board of Education. There is one online submission. It's Lena Mae Becker, 3755 County Route 45. This is more of a statement than a question, as the surveys sent out are with multiple choice answers where none of the choices apply to how parents actually feel. Most of our children were vaccinated with the understanding that they would no longer need a mask, and now you're saying they will be masked either way. Where is the scientific proof? Most pediatricians, doctors disagree with masking. We don't care or believe the pediatric association groups or the CDC recommendations anymore. It's all political based and changes with whatever fits their agenda. Parents should be given the choice on masking, and if not, at least a virtual option. Masking children all day long is unnecessary and damaging to their mental and physical health. These statements and questions were made and asked at the last meeting, and all parents got was a generic answer. The CDC, blah, blah, blah. Start making decisions that are beneficial to our children and not to the district's wallet. Next is the superintendent's report. Dr. Calvin.
All right. You know what? Actually, I'm going to need a little clicker there, Matt, if you can hand that to me. Sorry about that. Thank you. There we go. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it very well. Thanks so much. All right. So, let's see here for a moment. Got the right thing? I do. Again, good evening, board. Oh, what did I do? I'm sorry about that. So, we've had a very busy day, and just glad to be ready now and getting pretty much all set for our reopening. Earlier today, we had all of our teachers and staff who gathered, some virtually. A few of our staff were in person in our auditorium, and our staff participated in a really, I think, great kickoff professional development day. We had a guest speaker, Dr. Bird, an author, professor, who really spent time really helping us to think about our practices as we begin the school year. And he really ended off, I think, his discussion with talking about collaboration and the need for collaboration and having consciousness in the decisions that we make, and a great opening day. And I have to say, we're really looking forward to getting students back tomorrow. I walked around all of our schools today and heard a lot of great compliments from the opening day session. People have shared they really got a lot out of it. So really great day back for the first day back with our staff. Just in terms of return to school information, most students are going to be really back in learning. Since last week, we now have a list that has less than 10 students who are participating right now, who will be participating in remote learning. I believe the list earlier today was around 6, maybe 7 at the most. So in terms of the listing, we have one student who is an elementary student who is a possibility, but not a finalized child at all. And we thought that we would have more K through 8 students in place, but we don't. Many of our parents have shared with us that they are interested in bringing kiddos back and trying it out. There is a program. I did some research to see if we had any programs offered in our BOCES or through our BOCES that would be an online program. I think in a recent meeting I talked about there were some programs out there, but we had to do some investigation. Well, I did investigate to see are there any other online options available as opposed to a single teacher teaching one child in particular. And there is a program called the HIVE program. It's similar to Synergy, but it's for K through 6 students. It is a cross-contracted program with the Oneida, Herkimer, and Madison BOCES, not too far from here. They do have a teacher who's on, and the child is just like in a regular classroom, but it's an online classroom. The program for Hives is, the cost is $7,500, but it is aided at our percentage. And then, as you know, the Synergy cost, you know that cost is $11,500. Again, both of those are aided, so significant reduction in terms of the cost that we would see in the next year. I do think that the Synergy program, having learned about it, having researched it and looked at it, makes better sense as opposed to trying to get one teacher to teach one child throughout the entire year. So I am recommending that to the board. Want to make sure that you all are aware of that, and want to just get any feedback if you might have any feedback or concerns about it.
Yeah, Matt, it's just for the public. Can you compare that amount to how much it costs for just a traditional
Yes.
student to come here?
Yes, so the cost will be under $1,200 a year, right? Which, our cost that we pay per pupil is way over that amount. We're in, is it 19,000, I think, or tell me the amount again, Nancy, off the top of my head, I don't have it.
I think it's up to 21,000.
Yeah, so paying that price when everything's aided is far less than trying to pay the other amount, okay? So I think it's a great idea. Strong teachers involved, and just teachers who are doing it all, virtually. Any other questions or concerns about that?
No concerns, it looked great, the brochure that we had, I looked it over, it looked awesome. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Okay. We'll see if that student does come on board, and if not, then we'll go with the others who are going towards synergy. Okay? Okay, go ahead, Nancy. Excuse me. I have the thing here in front of me. I'm looking at Nancy, sorry. It's been a long day. With support of ARP and ESSER funds, I wanted to let the board know that we have made good on our promises around staffing. We have put into place a number of AIS positions in areas where we saw that we certainly had need. We know that in our elementary schools and the high school in particular, we had some needs for some additional staffing in terms of teaching staffing. At OMS, we needed a teaching assistant, so we did certainly put a teaching assistant there. At the elementary schools, we got 4 additional AIS math teachers, academic intervention support teachers, who could help catch some of our kids up in math who were really struggling. At reading, we know in the reading area, we needed 5 additional reading coaches. We know by the research that if we don't catch kids up by grades 3, it takes them 3 to 4 years to catch up in reading. And because of the learning loss that has happened over the last couple of years here, our goal is to try to make sure we catch up as many elementary students as we can. So we felt having the reading coaches in, helping, supporting, teaching, supporting kids wherever possible would certainly be important this year. We did put in 15 also additional teaching assistants. I know there was a question about teacher assistants earlier this year, and we felt that we definitely, as we did a survey with our principals and we talked with our staff, we knew that we needed some help in terms of teacher assistants. Teacher assistants can help us with small groups, lowering some of the class sizes, like especially for reading and for math, and so we did put those in, and that's 3 additional teaching assistants per building. We think that will certainly help out quite a bit. At the middle school, we did also put a teacher assistant in to help out. We do have already some AIS math and reading people there, but we knew we needed another assistant there, so we did put that in. At the high school, we have a new opportunity this year for academic intervention. So at the elementary schools, there's small groups. There's someone working with a reading group and a math group. But one of the things that we saw that we were lacking after being here for a year that certainly we looked at is how can we provide additional academic intervention support at the high school level? So across different categories, we saw that there were some gaps and we needed some help. So in science, in social studies, in math, and in ELA, particularly, when we say the ELA, also with honors and accelerated, we knew that we needed some extra support there. Many of our children, we just see, have been really struggling, and so what we wanted to do was provide some help. So we have this concept that we want to bring back to the district. I guess they had it here several years ago. Back in like 2011 or 2015, I think it was discontinued. But there's definitely a need, so we'll have a learning lab, learning center that will be staffed with teachers throughout the day. And children, some children will be assigned to the learning lab to go there and get extra support. Some students who have a free period can go into the lab and get help with homework, help with assignments, pre-teaching, reteaching, extensions of learning. Now, with respect to ELA, we have someone there to help with ELA, but also to help with the honors and the accelerated courses. We have a number of children that we saw were struggling with the accelerated courses. The problem is that many of the courses across categories have a lot of reading and a lot of writing in there, a lot of English that's connected. And the kids have just been struggling with respect to that. So we wanted to try this out this year to see how this might work. Also we put a teaching assistant also there at the Learning Lab, and all are there to kind of help and support and move students a little bit forward. I would say at the high school we've been lacking in some areas with intervention and support, and I think it certainly does lend itself to some of the concerns we have around the graduation rate. So we believe that this will certainly help, and we want to watch to see how it goes. And this is also connected to our strategic plan, which talks about raising the outcomes for students and increasing our graduation rate. So we're going to try to get in there and help in different areas where we see that there's been some struggles at. Heidi, do I leave anything else out about the AIS Student Learning Lab?
No, just that as we're filling the AIS positions, we have to backfill the classroom position. So it could be that tonight on the agenda, we have the appointment for the ELA person. However, until the OHS staff backfill that position, we won't obviously leave a classroom empty. That teacher will stay there and then transition to the learning lab.
And one of the things that we're backfilling with are, in most cases, long-term subs, because what we don't want to see is 2 years, 3 years down the road, if we have to make changes, that we have to, it's a whole different process to eliminate a position. It's certainly much easier to do that if you have these folks in as long-term subs. So we did do that in pretty much most of these cases. Okay. Any questions about that Learning Lab?
I just want to ask, with the permanent subs, I guess, that have already been hired for AP and honors classes, are they certified to teach those specific classes, just because we have had issues in the past?
Yes, absolutely. Any area that we're in a content, we would only fill that with a content certified appropriate specialist. And Mr. Lanigan and I had some conversations, especially like around math, so Mrs. Schultzke will be moving into the AIS position, but he's had some conversations with her to say the person who's coming in to replace her, they may mix and match a little bit. So she may still teach a section of her regular content, and then her replacement would then swap and pick up one period in the learning lab. That way it supports students at that higher level.
Right. Any other questions?
So how are we right now progressing towards filling these positions and backfilling the others?
We're doing very well. Actually, you'll see a number of these on tonight. Go ahead.
So I believe science is the area we're still looking. We did have a candidate, and they did kind of back out at the last minute once we were ready to do a second round interview. But we have the social studies person hired in that place, and math, and then ELA, they were working on some candidates just last week.
Yeah.
How about the middle school and elementary?
I
Very
believe
good.
we're just about set with everybody at the elementary level, and at the middle school, we didn't really have a whole
Just
lot
the
of people
teacher
moving
assistant
around
there.
there.
Yeah.
Just the TA.
Okay,
Mhm.
great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that? Pretty okay? All right, and I just want to add to that, we have tried to balance out with who takes those AIS spots, right? So we have a number of our very strong teachers, and then we have a mixture, right? We have some people who are newer, some who are kind of in the middle of their career. But, some people say, well, why take the strongest teacher, right, from the main classroom? So we try to do a balance, because sometimes we put the brand new teacher in to do AIS, but really you need the most skilled teacher to help with the kids who are really struggling, having a lot of trouble. You need that person who's got a lot of experience, who understands all of the strategies and how to do that. And so we try to really create a balance around that as we've put folks into these positions. Okay, just wanted to share that. Okay, thank you. Also, just wanted to share a little bit around SEL supports, social and emotional learning. We do have a number of people on tonight on the agenda, and also we had some on the last meeting. For elementary, we have put in 4 additional counselors. This allows for 5 counselors at elementary schools. We know one of the things we heard, let me back up, from our parents, from our survey, if you'll recall, is they wanted to make sure that we were doing a bit around social and emotional learning. We heard that was the #1 concern on their minds. And so we did put some counselors and supporters, some support systems in place. So at the elementary, 4 additional. This again will allow for 5 counselors at the elementary schools. At the middle school, we put in 1 additional school counselor, and we have a home and school liaison as a part-time person that will be shared between the middle school and also the high school. That person, like the wonderful lady here who was here on the end, their job is to help connect with families, to see what's out there, to provide supports, services, referrals, whatever is needed to help get the kids in school, help them to be successful in school, and to really support not only the child, but the family as a whole, basically. At the high school, we have an additional counselor. How you doing? Dylan is one of the additional counselors that we have here. And then we have a home and school liaison, which is .5. Again, share it with the middle school. And we also have some additional services that we're contracting with from Farnham Family Services, which support students who have some addictions and really need some additional supports. I think comprehensively, the goal is to really provide wraparound supports for our children and our families. And we were very discriminative in terms of who we hired. The people who are coming in the door to support us are skilled, they're experienced, they know how to work with students from a variety of backgrounds. And I think they're going to really do a great job with supporting our students and their families as well.
I just had a question about the counselors. I know there, when we went to the orientation, one of our counselors kind of said, I'm going to the middle school, so someone else will be your counselor. Is this the counselor, or is this an actual additional counselor?
Heidi, yes.
Yes, technically, if all goes well, as we expect tonight, Dylan will move into Barb Carroll's slot. We do have then the additional counselor that we hired, which brings us to 5 here at OHS. That person has to give a notice because they are currently employed. So we will have the 4, if you're thinking of as a parent, and Alpha split right now. And then as the new person joins us in a few weeks, then there'll be some communication that goes home. They will reevaluate where the alphabetic split happens, and then introduce folks to if you're going to be shifting any counselors.
So the 5th one is going to be like a traditional high school counselor. I know that, in meeting with the counselors at one point in time, they had said, it'd be great if we had some people really dedicated to the college and the future and all of that, and then some really just dedicated to mental health. So we're going to have 5 that are responsible for all of that.
Yes, we have 2 social workers here at the high school. They tend to pick up the more comprehensive issues that certain students might have. And then because we are at the high end of the recommendations for caseloads for counselors here at the high school, we've had 4 for the last few years. It really was a goal of ours to transition to 5 when the funding would allow, so that this gives us a chance to get to a better number per counselor.
Thank you.
Okay. So just want to let you know, these are things that we'll be bringing in. Any other questions? Everybody okay? Okay? All right. All right, and just a couple last things here. Last week, as many of you know, the governor, our new governor, and the legislature met. And on Thursday afternoon, late, they shared with us new information that we need to get into place in schools as soon as we possibly can. Some of the outcomes from the meetings, one of the things that came up at the legislative session is around remote options for Board of Education meetings. The law has, the executive order has now been put into place, which says if boards want to go back to doing remote meetings, boards can do that at any time. It's certainly up to boards. The second thing that came out was that, it is now, the governor has put into place that all schools must have their teachers and their staff either provide proof that they've been vaccinated, or else they have to be tested at least once per week. Also, there's provisions in the guidance that says that students also, if they are not vaccinated, will need to be tested as well at least once a week. The new health guidance for school reopenings that came out also was they put that information out, and it was very consistent with the CDC's recommendation. I think the New York State Education Department's recommendations, pretty much everything there coincided with each other. The executive order also asserted that local coordination and implementation now falls directly to local health departments. So with respect to the testing protocols, how it's going to be done, who's going to do it, that now goes onto the local health departments. So we have several surrounding bigger city health departments who've already been doing this for the last year. Well, now it's just kind of everybody has to get with your local department, and they're going to pretty much set everything up and implement the testing. We met last week, earlier in the week, in terms of, when I say we, the health department and our chief school officers all met from our BOCES. And there were still some things that need to be worked out. That was on Tuesday. Thursday, this came out. So Friday morning, we were on, the chief officers were all on trying to figure this out. And pretty much the outcome of the meeting is we're just going to have to hold off right now until our local health department tells us how they're going to do everything. They just heard about it the same time we heard about it. So they haven't had any time to plan. They haven't really had any time to put people in place for it. So it's all kind of just waiting to see what's going to happen, basically. In the interim, though, what we've been told to really start working on is gathering the vaccination data for our staff. And so before the week's out, actually tomorrow, I think it went out today, excuse me, we already put a note out to our staff asking them for their vaccination information. And just so the board knows, we have a separate file that's very confidential that we'll be holding that information in and with. And so we're asking people to start sending in your vaccination information. There's a survey they need to fill out. And once that's done, that'll tell us then where do we go from there, who needs to have the testing once a week. And with the testing, they have to come back once a week with a negative test. And that's basically going to be in place to the end of the year. So that's what we're working on right now. And hopefully we'll get more details in the pretty near future. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, is it testing for the young ones that can't get vaccinated?
That will be happening as well. Any student who is not vaccinated yet, those who, even including those who who are not even eligible yet, they will need to test at least once a week. Well, they should test. I'm going to take that back. The guidance reads that testing should be offered to them. Parents will have to give permission if they want that particular child to test. So we may have some kids who test, and we may have some kids who may not. It will be what it looks like right now is that we'll have like a list that will be kind of a reciprocal list. And so every so often, because it's a weekly kind of setup, throughout the week, parents will get a notice that says, hey, it's your time of the week for your child to be tested. But parents can, at this point, it looks like they can opt out and say, I don't want to have my child tested. They can do that at this time.
For children, it's optional.
For children, yes.
For our faculty and staff,
It is
they
not.
have to get tested.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
So just quickly, my second question is, I know the Oswego County Legislature approved, not unanimously, but like very small margin,
Right.
monies for testing, specifically designated for testing. Does that go to the health department, or
Yes.
is it going to be channeled to schools?
It was going, originally, our BOCES was working on coordinating all of this, and they were going to kind of work with the health departments and folks to make sure that there was payment done on it. So right now, it's kind of sitting in an account, basically with the county. One of the concerns, and just to be upfront with everyone as well, that we have heard on Friday that we heard about was that schools in our county need to be prepared to just put some money aside, because the amount that we have for the county is it's $3.8 million is what it is. That amount, if it were used like it's supposed to be across the entire county, we would only have enough to test each student and staff 3 times throughout the year. That's it. It'll be gone basically within a month. We've been told to just kind of think that through, because we may have to come to a point where the school districts may have to pay for that. Now, with that said, we have also heard that the governor has attached about 500, I think it was, $500+ million to testing protocols that's supposed to kind of go out across the state. We heard last week that some of this money was going to go like to Rite Aids across the state. Some of us don't have Rite Aids in our community. So then what? So we don't know really where it's going to go if it doesn't go to the Rite Aids. But there was some agreement with Rite Aids that they could help to test the schools. And so we're not sure yet what additional amounts may come in. Our hope is that there will be this extra pot of $500+ million that will come to schools to help with some of this testing. Now that $500 million plus is for the whole state. So that, you think about Long Island, New York City, some of the big fives, I just don't see that lasting very long. I'm just sharing that with the board, because we may have to think about where do we get the cost for this if this, comes up. Some of the tests, the swab tests in the mouth, some of them range from $200 to $400 for just a test. There is pool testing that is a little less expensive. I don't know the exact price off the top of my head, but I know it was like maybe for the pool, I think it was maybe $15 or $20 per person, I can't recall, but it was a little less expensive. The one thing with the pool testing also that we want to just be careful about is when you do the pool testing, we have to make sure we separate the pool out. So we don't do all the bus drivers at one time, or all the teachers in school A, or all the students, because if someone in the pool tests positive and we did all bus drivers, all the bus drivers would have to be quarantined until we really can figure everything out. So we're thinking through it all. We don't know yet where all the funds are going to come from. We're not sure yet what the protocols are going to look like from the county. But once we know, then we'll go from there. And we will come back and bring all this information back to the board. I just wanted to give you a heads up as we kind of roll through this. That's what we know as of Friday. Okay? Any other questions from the board?
I just had a question relative to the CARES Act money. Was not some of that utilizable for this or no?
I don't believe so. I believe the CARES Act money was supposed to be, do you have the, I know that the ESSER and the ARP money was about learning loss and catch-up, but I'm not sure about the catch-up. I don't
The
believe
CARES
so.
was for PPE?
Was only for PPE, no testing?
No.
No testing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Dr. Kelvin, just to clarify, for students, it's an opt-in system?
Yes.
Not an opt-out? Because some parents are gonna, wonder, what do I have to do, right? So if you don't want your kid tested, you do nothing.
Correct.
And if you want your student tested, then you can opt into the system.
Well, what will happen, we believe, let me just go back, and we'll have to wait to see what what the New York State Oswego Department of Health says. My thought is there'll be a survey that goes out. Parents can say yes or no, right? If you say yes, there's a permission slip that you'll need to fill out, basically. If you say no, we're done right at that point. But it'll be offered to you throughout the week periodically, right? Every week you'll have an opportunity to have your child tested.
And
That's what we're thinking.
And those who fail to respond will be an automatic no?
It would be considered a no. We would not do any testing unless a parent gives us permission to do that in advance.
Thank you.
Okay? All right. Okay. All right. Any other questions from the board? I just want to end by sharing with you that we do have our calendars out for this year. Those are going out in the mail. And if you go through the calendar, you'll see we have a section dedicated on our strategic plan. We also have our core beliefs throughout every month. And also in front of you is a new campaign that we've also worked on. There is a video that is now posted to our website. It's called We're All in This Together. The county administrator, Phil Church, the Mayor Barlow, and also Michael Haverlick from the hospital. We all were able to kind of connect with one another. We did a video to show and to share all the supports that each of our entities are willing to help and support with our community as we move throughout the year. So the video is out. I'll send that to you so that you can see the video. It's nice. It's right on our webpage. If you go to the reopening page, you can click right on the video and see it. And here's a copy of the poster, so you can see what's going out and being posted around. Our goal is just to support each other as we move through this year. And I want to thank these gentlemen in advance because they have been just willing to, whatever we need as a school district, they've said they're willing to offer and support us with. Okay? Any questions? Any thoughts? Great, good. All right, with that said, I'm all set. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, the Special Education Board Report of September 7th, 2021, and the minutes of the board meeting of August 16th, 2021. Could I have a motion?
Move it.
Lisa, second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I have one question. Sorry, I have one question, and this embarrasses me because I remember asking this last year, and I couldn't find my notes for the answer. For the special ed, are those new kids coming into the district, or is everybody reassessed each year? Do you know? Because it seems like it's not enough for that it's everybody, but, and I'm assuming people are reassessed all the time, but I was just curious as to what goes in that.
Yeah, they're all on a cycle, a specific cycle, and so these are probably either new or ones that are just getting back onto the cycle. So it's all done periodically throughout the school year.
It's reciprocal.
And preschool, those also are.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to ask again.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is curriculum with Carrie Plass.
Hello. I only have one item tonight, and it is the federal programs, title grants, that the board accepts permission, or grants permission to implement the title programs as listed. Title I, Part A, that grant is utilized to fund AIS, academic intervention, and parent engagement at the title buildings. Title I, School Improvement Grant, that is aligned to the middle school for the ESSA accountability. Title III, Part A, is for our English language learner students. Title IV, Part A, that's for well-rounded safety and technology. And Title V is our rural low-income students grant.
Motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is personnel with Heidi Sweeney.
Before we start the items, over the weekend, we found 2 areas where I would need to provide some corrections. So Karen suggested that if I read you the 2 corrected areas, then we can amend the agenda, and then we'll move through the items as we normally do. So the first one, it's items J and K. Those are the elementary team leader stipends for Riley and Fitzhugh Park. The numbers on the agenda are incorrect and should be 2759 to match KPS, which is correct. And then the second one is in item G. Beth O'Key is being appointed at Fitzhugh Park, but her instructional appointment worksheet indicated Minetto, which is incorrect. All of her other information is accurate. She is replacing Jamie Brancato at Fitzhugh Park. It was just a mistype for Minetto for the location on the instructional worksheet. But the other backup is from Donna Simmons for Fitzhugh Park. So those are the 2 amendments for items J and K and in item G.
Okay, so we just need a first and a second on that amendment.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, A, we have a support staff retirement, whereas Andrew Cruel was employed continuously by the Oswego City School District from February 1987 until September 2021, and whereas Mr. Cruel admirably served the students and staff of the school district with his full commitment to his responsibilities as a senior grounds worker to work in partnership with fellow employees and with his full service and dedication to the best interests of all students of the Oswego City School District. Now therefore be it resolved that the Oswego City School District recognizes that the service of Mr. Cruel was an asset to the students and staff, and we express gratitude and sincere appreciation for his 34.5 years of service.
Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The next batch are our professional staff recommendations. Those are items B as in boy through I. We have a variety of appointments, resignations, leaves of absence. We have our batch of additional probationary staff appointments, as well as the continuation of our teaching staff, teaching assistant appointments. Regular substitutes, as we are backfilling the positions that we've moved around under some of the funding for the grants. We have an intern appointment and the one that we discussed earlier, Carrie Patney, into the English teacher for the AP Accelerated Lab.
Okay. Items B through I, could I have a motion?
Move it.
Jim? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Then we have the extra comps that begin with J through R. So we've got the corrected stipends, we have intramurals. Soccer, I don't know if you had a chance to review the backup, okay, great.
So we've got N and O there. P, OMS intramurals. Q, winter sports. R, we have fall sports volunteers.
Items J through R, motion.
I'd like to make a motion to take item Q separately and pull the board.
Okay, Pam needs a second for her motion to remove Q from that list and consider it separately.
So just a point of order, we haven't made the motion in the first place?
She just did.
No, the actual.
Oh,
so
the actual motion.
She read out the number letters, but we didn't actually move those letters.
Okay.
So those aren't actually under
Yeah.
consideration.
Would
yet.
it,
So if you would just like.
I was
to
gonna
do-
say
Why don't you do?
J through P?
There you
Mhm.
go.
That
Okay.
works. That's
So J
easier.
through P as presented?
Could I have a motion J through P?
I'll move it.
Second?
A second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then Q separately then?
Could I have a motion for item Q?
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I had a question, looking just at the stipends. How come the bowling varsity head coaches seem to get a lot less than every other varsity coach?
There's a coach's formulary that's in the OCTA contract, and the different sports are broken up into different categories, depending on the type of sport as well as the level. Then there's a mathematical calculation to determine it, as well as years added if you're a returning coach.
And if you move from boys to girls in the same sport, do you get to keep your years?
Yes, we do allow boys to girls or vice versa in the same sport to keep your years. We have had, let's say, softball to baseball and back and forth, or boys and girls soccer, for example, and back and forth.
And what is the formula based on? I mean, I know years, I get that, but like, is it a number of practices?
Mhm.
Is it number
A
of
time
games?
commitment, number of games per season. It's negotiated and based on a number of other districts that use a similar formulary. I can send you a little bit more information if you'd like in transmittal, some of the history of that. But it's a breakdown.
It's fine,
in
I
the
would just like to
okay.
say, I think the bowling
Sure.
coaches
They
work
get
very,
slated.
very, very hard, and they're excellent at what they do, so just gonna say that.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay.
The
And-
resolution passed 6-1.
Is it 5-1?
Oh, 5-1, I'm sorry. Thank you.
And then just to close out that section, are our 2 fall sports volunteers.
I'll move it.
Who
I'll
moved that?
second.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I did.
Thank you, Lisa. Second,
I'll
Tom?
second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And then the last batch, our support staff recommendations, S through Z. Again, a variety of our resignations, leaves of absences. We have some probationary appointments, a temporary appointment at both the high school and Minetto. We have 2 closing out our summer school time for an additional time for Janine Regan, and then an additional nurse appointment, as well as Z, the sub and temp employee batch.
Items S through V, could I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I just had a quick question regarding I saw we're losing a bus driver. How are we doing in the bus driver arena?
Our bus drivers are, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go for it.
I just know, I mean, it's everywhere. I just
Yeah.
wanted to
Yes.
tap in and see where we are.
We're a little tight right now. Mr. Gunn has reached out to both Nancy and myself. We're trying to be very creative in how we're scheduling
away athletics. I know he's reached out to a local busing agency to see if they can help us
Support.
fill in a little bit. But we are trying a lot of different avenues to recruit folks,
Yeah.
and our pay is competitive. We keep reviewing our pay scale. We are pretty competitive in the county. I know Nancy talks to her business official folks often.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's nationwide, it's not
Yes.
even statewide anymore, but I just wanted to see where we were relative to that.
We're just hoping everyone stays healthy.
Yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is Finance with Nancy Squire.
A is our annual transportation contract with OCM BOCES for our special education students at $105. B is a contract with New York State Coalition for Independent and Religious Schools, and that is for Trinity Catholic, paid with Title IIA and Title IV funding as presented. C is an MOU with Ruth Taylor, and that is for literacy remediation for the community Christian school, not to exceed $1,816. D is a budget transfer, and that is just to correct the coding for the nurses. They had moved, so we want to make sure that they're in the correct location. E through H is the annual tax notices from our tax collector, establishing the roll and the tax rate, and the warrant for collection that she does annually.
Items A through H, could I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I have a question about the tax. Is this why we haven't received our tax bills?
They usually don't go out until the end of September.
I thought they were due at the end of September. They're due at the end of October?
No, they're due at the end of October. We're one of the only school districts that have an October start date for tax collection.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is items from the board. Would the board have any items tonight?
I just,
oh,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, you first.
Because I
No.
might forget.
Then go.
I didn't write it down. No, we had brought up the conversation, Jim had brought up the conversation about whether or not we were going to keep reading the content that was put on our website for public comment. And I do think we did get information back from our attorney, and I do think we need to have that conversation and maybe decide how we want to proceed as a board. And basically, our attorney said that it's, you kind of have some discretion here. In fact, you don't even have to have a public session, but obviously we find that important. And, the level to which you restrict it is definitely up to you. His recommendation was to restrict it more than I think we're more comfortable doing.
Right.
But, he's just trying to protect.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with his recommendation. It wasn't something that I had thought about until, I think Jim at the last meeting had mentioned that we may possibly be, if we had 100 submissions, poor Karen would have to stand there and read 100 submissions. And I think the logic of the explanation of the restrictions made a lot of sense to me.
The other thoughts?
I just, there's one part of me that likes it, the idea that we have the questions, but if we can answer them or have them answered ahead of time, just for the edification of people. Some of this stuff we've certainly answered in previous meetings, just to make sure, because I think sometimes people, we read them and they feel like it just falls on deaf ears. Just like, for example, the woman who referenced tonight, who wrote in and said, it looks like we're not responding. So I don't know how we bridge that. If someone's here, we don't engage, but if there's any way that we could answer some of those, or no. I mean.
I think
or
we
just-
do. Between Mathis and I, we do.
Right, but I mean, is it the public acknowledgement that we have? Do you know what I'm saying? It's relative to clarity just to the community as opposed that we are answering and we have answered those questions.
So I think a lot of the content is in the superintendent's report that answers the questions. So anyone paying attention should know that we are answering them. We've been very responsive to individual questions and inquiries. If it's administrative in nature, Dr. Calvin answers it. If it really is a board, something the board had to act on or had discretion on, then I will answer it. But as far as public, the public, and so the public knows we've answered the questions, I really do think Dr. Calvin's done a great job of embedding those answers in. If you're looking for maybe specifically saying question, answer, that kind of a thing, I think we did that too, didn't we?
Yes, we have, so you have a Q&A page, which we can, certainly now that we're back for this year, that we can use, that people can go to. If there are questions that come, we certainly will send out a response, a letter. We've done that before to the community. Like Heather says, if it's something from the board, she would do so. If it's something about the day-to-day operations of the schools, I will do that as well, and I continue to do so. I think what's happened sometimes too is some of the people may not be watching the board meetings, and so they don't recognize we've already had that conversation. Sometimes too, people will put in, not really a question, but they put their statement in. So generally, we'll just send them something to say, thank you, we received your statement, and something like that. But I mean, we can certainly continue to do that. But again, you do have a Q&A page on the website that we can go and update now that we're in a new session. We have letters, and then, as Heather said, what I also try to do is if I hear a question that comes up, I'll try to answer it during my presentation time, if at all possible, to help people out with knowing that we are hearing you, answering your question. Right? I don't know. Would that help?
And I don't know that we actually have to have the content read, as long as there is a place for people to ask those questions publicly on our website, on the question and answer, because I think it is important for people who can't get here at 5 o'clock, to have a place. But I think that's a really nice balance, actually. What do you guys think?
I agree. I think it's really necessary for us to have as many avenues of input as possible.
I think your mic's on.
Oh, it is on. Maybe it's just not on.
There you
go. I'll speak up. Yeah, I think it's important that we have as many avenues as possible for input, and having something online for people to be able to communicate to the district, to the administration, who can forward it to the board. I do think that's important. I do believe that, based on my reading of the school law book that Dr. Calvin provided us, is that it's floor to the public. And that's about, during this open meeting, about coming in and taking the floor and speaking directly. Now, we do have within our rules that we don't have to respond, and there's a 3-minute thing. I mean, there's other stipulations, but we can respond. There was a couple meetings ago where Tom, as our presiding officer here, spoke to a couple things because there were some clearly misconceptions. So we were able to address that live and right there, and there could be a back and forth if necessary. Based on school law, if we're going to open it up, we should allow it whether you're in the district or not. And one of the worries I have is if we're opening up to a virtual thing that's read aloud, that it could turn into anybody who wanted to enter into the system, whether a member of our district or not may, in which if they're willing to drive here and stand up and speak, cool, I'll listen. But I think that becomes the difference between having a useful portal to be able to communicate with us versus the formality of having an open meeting and turning the floor to the public. So it would be my preference that we would be able to keep both, but that the reading is something that we would do off to the side. It wouldn't be part of our normal meeting. That would be the floor aspect for those who are able to make it.
Would it be easier to post those in board docs and people there will see them, and we would just say they'll be addressed on the Q&A portal of our page? So at least they're recognized in knowledge, and then we go floor to the public. So we've just recognized in terms of form, that we said, okay, these questions have been asked, and they'll be answered over there, and then the floor goes to the public.
Well, one of the restrictions that, I'm completely
Tom?
blanking on Tom's last
Tom.
name.
It's okay.
Buckle.
Buckle, right, sorry, had recommended was to have the people speak to something that was on the agenda that night. I mean, so we spent like 30 minutes listening to comments that we had already, actually, like, it was on the agenda that night, and they were superfluous comments, because we weren't actually pursuing the right train that they thought we were, right? So, and I think that is something, that we may want to consider. I'm a little leery of doing that, because I do think it's important if someone has a question about something, that there should be a place where they can ask it. But that was one of the recommendations that made sense to me, because then we would want feedback on what we're about to vote on.
And I think it made sense to me too. I think the only caveat is, like you just suggested, sometimes there's issues we don't, they're
Right.
not in a resolution, and they really, people need to speak on it or want to speak on it or bring it to our attention. And I think that's where it might become complicated.
I will say, Tom, though, I would say that if they come through the portal, if they come from an online aspect, that they're not included in board docs or in the minutes, just because to me, and this is just my opinion, the meeting is the meeting. The minutes reflect the meeting, board docs reflects what happened in the meeting, and those other things. Again, I think it's useful information. I'm all for having as many avenues of communication as possible, but to me, part of this, we got into this because of virtual, right? And one of the things virtual has taught us is that there are some things that work and some things that don't as well, and we're adjusting. But the problem is, I think sometimes, is we take some of those things that might work and had justification in virtual, where they don't have the same kind of justification when we get back to normal. And that's what we're doing here. And so in the normal aspect, I'm just going to say, I believe the floor is the floor, and the president has the ability to shut down the floor if necessary. That's something too, because if somebody goes in and says, I'm just going to send all my stuff via a portal, you have to expect that's going to be edited, right? Because you just can't say anything. Because even in an open meeting, we say at the very beginning, as Nancy reads off, there are certain stipulations in codes of conduct where the president gavel us, no, stop. So I just think having that as what we've always done, to me, makes the most sense.
And would you say eliminate it?
I would
that?
eliminate it from the open meeting aspect.
Portion.
I would say don't eliminate it and find ways to increase user of information gathering. I think that is very important. But just as the aspect of open meeting law in this proceeding, that's where I think it should be floor to the public in person.
I like that.
I think I agree with you, Jim. I just think the only part that I disagree with is I think that people who aren't available at 5 because of jobs they have or, found the voice. And I don't want to shut that voice up. And I think that that's my only, I get what you're saying, but I think that's my only kind of moral conviction. The legislative meetings were always at 2 o'clock, and then we realized that's an issue for people to come and talk at 2 o'clock when you have a 9 to 5 job. So we started having 7 o'clock meetings as well to accommodate different work schedules. But we have been 5 o'clock as far as I can remember here, and that's really to be courteous to our faculty and staff, I think. So without providing another time, I feel like we need to provide another place for public input.
I see what you're saying, but the one thing I got about that is, having come to meetings myself and having been involved in the district, even from a school board and public aspect before I was elected a board member, if I wanted the board to hear it and I had an avenue to put that out in an internet type thing, a portal, and I knew you were I sent emails directly to the board, and I got responses I knew you saw that. If I wanted something to be public, and I wanted my voice to be heard by everybody, I would either make the time to show up here, or I'd write into the Pal Times. And I'd write in a letter to the editor. Because that is how, I think, view it as a difference between, are you informing the board, which the portal will allow, versus, I not only want to let the board know, I want to let everybody else know what I think. That's the public aspect of it. And beyond this meeting, there are other avenues to do it, including writing letters to the editor, posting things on social media. Not that I'm encouraging that. But, but what I'm saying is, as part of the formality of our meetings, we're not, even though they can't make a 5 o'clock meeting, we're still going to hear from them, because they will email us. They will still put that portal in.
I mean, just looking at the last meeting, we had a certain contingency that was here to speak. They all agreed one way, and it was just interesting to me that our portal folks all had a different perspective, and they were a different group of people. So it's hard to look away from that when you look at it statistically speaking, I guess.
I can see that.
So I guess, is there any other input? Because I do think we need to kind of make a decision and just move forward and make sure our public understands what our expectations are and what we're doing.
So I guess I would say that as any of us in the items from the board, if we wanted to, or you certainly could, summarize things that came through the portal that we want to actually have a discussion on, as opposed to reading out everything that
That's a really
comes
good
in
idea.
from the public, so that people know that there is a, so it's not that we can't talk about it, it just then puts it to us to bring it back.
I like that idea. I like that idea.
Because it
That
does
seems
give-
like the perfect compromise.
Yeah.
Because right, I totally agree with Jim's side, the public's the public. And until we were virtual, this didn't exist. So, but then I also agree with Heather, because I know many people that won't come to that public floor, won't come to that microphone. Took me a long time to walk up to that microphone. So they're out there are a lot of them. And yeah, we need their opinion too. So Lisa, that's a perfect compromise.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like that too. Does everybody agree on that? So we'll kind of
like
go
that.
back to traditional public session
Yeah.
with the added piece that we will keep the portal open and we'll read it. And if there's something that comes in front of us that everybody should know, we'll bring that up in items from the board.
I actually, is this another thing? Tom, I'm sorry, I'm so totally usurping you again, but
Tom, you better remember.
it's on this same point. We did get a comment a few meetings ago from a woman who was complaining about the ease of accessing our website and navigating our website. And it's not great, and it's not mobile friendly. I've gone and looked at the questions from the board, but it's only because it took me a little bit to find it, so, and that's a problem. Because
a
if
big
people don't
problem,
know
Lisa.
that it's there, but if people don't even know that it's there, it's not clear when you first go to the website. So, that is an expensive task. And so I just think maybe as we're thinking about next year's budget, because we would have to pay somebody to do that, to do it well. I think that that's something we should consider, because our website is not
User-friendly.
user-friendly, right?
Can I just share, I agree with you. I went on to the site myself after that meeting and kind of just looked for a number of things. I was able to find some things, but because I know where it's at, I knew I was able to find it. But there were some other things that I would say weren't as easy, friendly to do. So it's great that you bring that point up, because I have been thinking about it. So I'll need to get together with Jamie and work on that piece around the site. In addition to, we had a recent audit report that came up that talked about some things with our site. So I'd like to do the whole thing together. And that would certainly be a part that I agree with you. We can do better with that. So we'll work on it. We'll work throughout the year to figure that out. Yeah, thank you. I agree.
Tom?
No, I'm good. No, I think I like the solution we've come to, because it gives us editing. If Mathis addresses issue, he can address them that are agenda relative. If we have something else, we can bring it forward, but it also shows engagement with the community, so I think that's great. And I agree with you 100% regarding the website and redoing it, so it's much easier to navigate. So I'm done now.
Did you have something else, though?
After I did, it's left.
It's gone. We waited.
That
Sorry.
that left.
Can I just say how nice the turf is looking? on our former Wilbur Field coming along. It's so nice to see, not piles, but level. It's like, whoo, exciting. And as always, thank you, teachers, faculty, staff, all of them. Everybody, administrators, we always appreciate you, all that you do. And here we are, off for another year. Woohoo! Better than last.
Sorry.
And thank you, Dr. Kelvin, for this morning. The speaker was fantastic. I mean, just really engaging and had a lot of great things to share.
All right,
And we'll all get there. We're just not there yet.
so I just have a few things. One is just a first comment and just a thank you for everybody who's come up with the plan, how to use our federal funds, the ARP and the ESSER funds, to increase the amount of TAs, particularly at the elementary level. I hope that we really pay attention to how this impacts our students, because it's my belief that this is something that is necessary long-term, and I'm hoping that, the data proves it. I hope that, this comes out and it's substantiated the way I think it is, and that we can find ways to continue it, because I've always been an advocate for this. So I want to thank everybody for coming up with that, again, especially at the elementary level. The second thing that I'd like to talk about is just a request. I did read in one of the communications to the public that, Dr. Calvin, you're not going to be doing the COVID announcements, cases type things, and I understand why. I do know some parents that want it and some parents that say, leave me alone about it, so it is something to weigh. But one other thing I do ask is that you at least keep the board up to date on that, including if there's any evidence that you have of spread within our buildings or within our programs, extracurricular and such, just so that we can keep up on that. And the last thing has to do with looking at some of the media lately about football teams, seeing some of the nice pictures. One of the things I noticed is that a couple of the local teams, and I could be wrong on this, but I think maybe Mexico and Hannibal, they're utilizing this extra foam pad on the top of the helmet that is available. All right, so I know we spent, when we geared up for last football season, we spent an extra $20,000 to get all new helmets for the right reason, safety of our students who are participating. But there is this extra feature. It's kind of a cloth matted addition you can add to a helmet. And I just noticed it looking at the Pell Times that there are other teams that are using that. I do remember back a few weeks ago, I think, I was reading the Buffalo Bills are actually using it in practices for their offensive and defensive linemen because they want to cut down on head-to-head contact. So I guess it's just kind of a request of, can we look into, talk to our athletic director, our football coach, see if there's something they're interested in. I'm hoping personally they would be, because I think it would, it shows it cuts down on injuries. And if that's the case, I would like us to look into finding the funds to do that. If we're gonna, we're gonna do what we should be doing with the utmost safety. And I would like to see that if possible.
Sure, this is new to me, so I would be very interested in researching this. I'll research it and share information with the board in our Friday email. Sure.
Great,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Sean?
I received an email, Pam made me think about when she said the former Wilbur Field. Two former coaches that were teachers and the former athletic director asked me what is being done with the Wilbur Field name. Like, they want to see it stay as Wilbur Field, but in the Pale Times the other day it said the former field, and then she just mentioned it, which made me think of it. Is there anything going on with what it will be named, the stadium itself or the practice fields, or?
At this time, we have not, at the district level, done anything with names or anything like that. Certainly, if the board wishes to think that through or just, think on that, we can certainly come back and kind of, let me talk with the team and the staff a little bit, but we have not done any naming of the, the stadium, or we just kind of kept everything status quo at this point in time. basically.
I know in the past that we had pursued, were you going to say something, Tom? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the past, I believe we decided not to name the stadium, right? And just be able to do different sections where naming could happen, but not an overall name. As far as Wilbur, though, we hadn't made any determination, I think, in the past. Is that, Heather, would you
Actually, no,
recollect?
so several years back,
Oh, okay.
when a former employee lost her life, there was talk about naming a library after her, and we pursued policy that actually said, let's not name large buildings or fields or whatever after individuals, but do things like plaques and what have you. I don't know if that policy ever came to fruition. Does anyone remember what I'm talking about?
We can look it
Okay.
up and see. We can
Okay,
check.
thank you, I'm not going crazy.
Nancy saying yes, it did.
No, I remember the conversation,
Yeah.
but I don't remember if it ever went through or followed up on.
I don't think it actually did.
And I'm not sure where that went, but I do remember the discussion because there was desire to perhaps review the policy and then come up with a process.
Yes.
We can check to see if there is a policy in place for that, and share that with the board, and then wherever the policy committee or group wants to go from there, we can go from there.
That sounds good.
Okay, we'll check for the policy. Hope we answered your question, Sean. Right now, there's been no decision in terms of naming. It's been status quo, keep everything kind of as it is right now.
Sean, was the email referencing that they want to see it stay the same?
Yeah, they want to see it stay the same. Wilbur Field, because he was the longtime athletic director back in the day. These guys were coaches here and teachers at Oswego High for years, as well as a former athletic director. They wanted to see something named, I think, after Wilbur, and I think the practice field would be fine. I'll have to look at the email, and I can actually forward the email and all the information to the board tonight.
That'd be great.
Just because I just got that this morning, but she made me think of it when she said the former field, and I know the article in the Pale Times said the same thing, so that's what worried them.
Okay.
So, but there's a practice field going in the spot where Wilbur Field
Right.
was, so, I mean, we didn't take the name away, just
Right.
the field changed, so. But yeah, that's future.
Would there be any other items tonight? Sorry, Dr.
No,
Gelman.
go ahead.
Uh,
Just came out of nowhere.
Would there be a need for executive session tonight?
Yes, I do need a brief executive to talk about proposed current litigation and collective negotiations with the board.
Could I have a motion for executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session.
And there won't be any action after.
Thank you.